Hello guys, welcome back to Fun with Frank. In this video, we are looking at the top 10 serial killers. But before we get started, make sure to subscribe the channel and hit the bell icon. The tragic and terrifying news of murders and serial killings that can be found in the daily news is sure to leave readers feeling numb and helpless. These men have shattered the unwavering faith and love that serves as a support structure for all humanity. Their activities are a stain of society and have caused a significant deal of heartache and suffering to countless people. These serial killers conduct their heinous crimes through means that are frequently cruel and cunning. In this video, we will discuss some of the most notorious serial killers in the history of the globe and their crimes. Number 1. Ahmad Suraj, Datuk Merinci. Ahmad Suraj is an Indonesian cattle breeder who has admitted to being responsible for the deaths of 42 people. His victims were predominantly young girls and women, and he would kill them before burying their bodies up to their waists in the sugarcane field where he worked. He was under the impression that carrying out this practice of burying dead bodies with their backs to his home would endow him with more gravitas. He was given a sentence of death, and the firing squad was responsible for carrying out his punishment. Number 2. Jack the Ripper. By the late 1880s, Jack the Ripper had claimed over 100 lives in London city's centre. All of the victims were sex workers, and they were brutally murdered and dismembered with carving knife. Several letters reportedly written by the murderer were mailed to the London Metropolitan Police and contained taunts about the murders. There were numerous manhunts and investigations conducted, but no leads led to a resolution of the case. Inconclusive evidence led to the case being closed in 1892. Considering the killer's apparent mastery of human anatomy, many have speculated that he was either a butcher or a surgeon. One of the most well-known serial killers' aliases is Jack the Ripper. Number 3. Tsutomu Miyazuki, the otaku murderer. Tsutomu Miyazuki kidnapped and murdered young females, and he even conducted necrophilia on them. After murdering a woman, he drinks her blood and eats her hand as one of his numerous heinous crimes. He was known as a human Dracula because of his penchant for keeping trophies made from the bodies of the victims. Tsutomu Miyazuki's heinous deeds were driven by his depression following the death of his grandfather in 1988. He further taunted the relatives of his victims by sending them postcards detailing his horrible crimes. Miyazuki was arrested for the murder of 4 young girls in July of 1989 and was eventually condemned to death in 1997. Number 4. Ted Bundy. In order to rape and murder multiple young women, Ted Bundy exploited his good looks, intelligence and charisma. His trial was the first of a serial murderer to be shown live on national television. Ted Bundy frequently returned to the scenes of his murders in order to engage in sexual acts with the bodies of his victims. When police searched Bundy's residence, they found 12 severed heads he'd stored as mementos. He relished the attention he received from the press and even invited reporters inside his home. He also received several messages of support from people who hoped to prevent his execution. Unfortunately, it was in vain, and in 1989 he was put to death by electrocution. While he admitted to killing 30 people, his true body count is unknown. One of the most well-known documentaries about serial killers is Conversations with a Killer, the Ted Bundy tapes. Number 5. Jeffrey Dahmer, Milwaukee, Canada. In 1978, when he was only 18, Jeffrey Dahmer murdered for the first time. From this point forward, on his arrest in 1991, he committed multiple murders. In addition to preparing eating his victims' body parts, Dahmer engaged in necrophilia. Someone who was going to be his victim ended up beating him up and then reporting him to the police. The majority of those he killed were black males in their 20s. His grisly testimony at his high-profile trial piqued the public's interest in serial killers, once more by detailing his cannibalism and necrophilia. Dahmer was given a 927-year sentence in 1992, but he was murdered in jail in 1994. He is considered one of the top serial killers of all time. Number 6. John Wayne Gacy, the Killer Clown. None of John Wayne Gacy's neighbors saw the serial killer and sex offender coming. About 33 young men and boys were victimized by him between 1972 and 1978. He'd lure young men to his residence with the promise of labor or money and use a tourniquet to kill them once they arrived. When he was finished with his victims, he would store their bodies in the basement of his home and then dump them in the Des Plaines River. John earned the moniker Killer Clown for his many performances as a clown at charity events. For his part in 33 murders, he was apprehended and executed. He spent 14 years on death row before being put to death by injection in 1994. Number 7. Luis Garavito, La Bestia. Over 300 people have fallen prey to the serial killer Luis Garavito in Colombia. His modus operandi consisted of enticing young disadvantaged boys with money, candy, or odd tasks before torturing, raping, and killing them. While he has confessed to 138 separate crimes, the actual number of victims is much higher. He has more murder victims than the worst serial killer in history, Pedro Lopez, according to the Guinness Book of World Records. Even though Garavito confessed to killing both men, he was only charged with attempted rape after his arrest on April 22, 1999. Garavito was given a total of 1,008.53 years and 9 days in prison after being convicted on multiple counts based on evidence gathered at various crime locations. Among serial murders, he ranks among the worst. Number 8. Harold Shipman, Dr. Death. In his role as a well-liked British physician, serial killer Harold Shipman committed as many as 218 killings, making one of the most prolific killers in history. In 1972, he started killing individuals, and by his first practice, he had killed more than 70. When he opened a second office, the number of victims nearly doubled. Most of them were older women. Shipman committed 3 further killings after the initial investigations were botched. His last victim's autopsy results tipped authorities off, showing that she had taken a lot of diamorphine. In the year 2000, he was found guilty and given a life sentence without the possibility of release. Instead of facing the consequences of his actions, he took his own life in jail. Number 9. Alexander Petrushkin, the Pizza Park Maniac. Former serial killer Alexander Petrushkin, also known as the Chessboard Killer and the Pizza Park Maniac, would prey on homeless males. They were slain with brutal instruments after being lured into his residence by vodka. Most of his victims had open wounds on the back of their heads from being hit with a hammer, and empty vodka bottles had been placed into some of them. Intending to fill a chessboard with 64 white squares, he set out to kill 64 people. However, he was apprehended and now spends the rest of his natural life in prison for the murder of at least 49 individuals. Number 10. Richard Ramirez, Night Stalker. American serial killer Richard Ramirez, also known as the Night Stalker, was responsible for at least 15 homicides and multiple instances of torture. He committed the crime because after suffering from epilepsy since childhood, he became a major drug user and began to believe in Satanism. A house invasion and theft were his first moves, but he quickly escalated to physical force. His first victim was an elderly lady who he sexually raped, stabbed to death, and robbed at her home. In Greater Los Angeles and then the San Francisco Bay Area, he scared the populace with his home invasion and murder spree. His crimes demonstrated cruelty, callousness, and viciousness beyond human understanding. As the sentencing court put it, Richard Ramirez died of B-cell lymphoma in the death chamber without ever having contemplated the gravity of his deeds. Thank you for watching the video.